Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts as they share with you the insider's guide to property investing.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, your insider's guide to property investing. I'm Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, and he's Ben Kingsley, the chair of the Property Investment Professionals of Australia and also the current Property Investment Advisor of the Year. And as we continue this summer series, Ben, how are you?
Very well, mate.
It's good. We've got a very special guest today.
We do. Got a guest in today. It's looking forward to the conversation.
So am I. Yeah, no, we obviously you're in your role as the chair of PIPA. You get to meet some guys around the country, and Steve's part of the board.
He is
of PIPA, and he's been so kind as to come and join us on the couch today. So hello, Steve.
How are you, mate?
I'm very, very well. Thanks for coming and sitting on the couch.
Pleasure. Awesome to be here. Lovely new digs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, we're very happy in the new digs. But today we want to talk about you.
Right.
We want to talk about you as a property investor because we know that you've been very active in the marketplace, both personally and professionally. And for the benefit of our listeners, what we're trying to do is give them the insider's guide to property investing. Mm-hmm. And obviously, each week they get a flavour from Ben and I as to what our philosophies are. But we also like to get some people on to share some other insights as well. So today we want to talk about you as a property investor.
Pressure's on.
First question.
Yeah.
Why are you a property investor?
Look, that's a good question. I started out investing by chance, more so than anything. My then girlfriend, now wife, was actually investing before me. And she had a few properties. And when I met her, she demanded that I read a book about investing.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I'll do whatever I have to do to woo my
future wife. Exactly.
And I don't read at the best of times, but I read this book and it sort of inspired me a little bit. And then because everything about me is about numbers from my past industry, and I said, okay, look, show me the numbers, and she did that, and I couldn't make them fall down.
Yep.
Yeah, worst case scenario, because I'm quite conservative at the best of times. So I said to her, look, go out and find me a property. See how you go. It was all a bit of bluff from my perspective. She rang me the next...
How long? The next
24 hours. She rang me up and she said, look, I've got one for you. And I just went to water. I just thought, no, this can't be happening. And anyway, so she negotiated it for me for $105,000. The list price was $110,000. And I thought, well, here's my exit strategy. I said, you only got $5,000 off. It can't be much of a deal. Anyway, so we purchased, we went unconditional, got my finance got knocked back before settlement, so I had to chip in more, which I didn't think was too good, so I thought this investing's not going too well so far. Settled it, started to paint it, couldn't rent it because I wanted too much. I thought, this is my house, it deserves to get more money. But I dropped the rent, we rented it out, and 12 months later to the day, it doubled in value.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, this investing's all right.
This thing goes right. So now, I reckon a lot of the listeners are going to say, what was the book? So do you remember the name of the book?
It was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki. It for me, I don't remember much of the book except that one little paragraph that said, let the money work for you. You don't work for the money. That was it for me.
Yeah, okay. And look, I mean, obviously, because in that book, mostly it's about acquiring and not using debt. Now that was a different situation over in the States. You can sort of do that, but obviously in our businesses and what we do, it's all about the numbers, and debt is part of the conversation.
Part of the numbers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can't spend all of waiting 10 years to save up so you can buy one outright.
For sure.
You'll end up with two properties.
I must admit the two most impactful books for me are Jan Summers, A Guide to Property Investing. What's the first one? The Building Wealth Through Property. And the second one was Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that was just a paradigm changer.
That's a really good way to put it. It was a big aha for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, you said your background is numbers. For the benefit of the listeners, can we learn a bit more about what the background was?
So my family we export beef, cattle farming, processing, all that.
Not a bad business to be in either.
Well, it was, not so much now. But so everything was about the numbers down to the 1/10 of a cent of a kilo. And I've sort of carried that forward in terms of the cost to operate of my properties and so on. It's worked well for me.
Yeah, it has. Absolutely. So first property's away, you're now hooked. And so when did the transition come to sort of move into the industry? How did that sort of play itself out?
Well, after the first property, as I said, I thought it was pretty awesome, so I went out and I bought another 4 pretty quickly. And
as you did.
Yeah, why not? But, I literally I pulled out of the family business, and I took a little bit of money with me, a small amount, sold all the toys, the boats, the cars, everything I had to do to get moving.
Yep.
And I had a part-time job. I can't remember what it was doing, but I was really just mucking around more so than anything. And I started to accumulate more and more properties, and I loved the renovating side of it. And then friends started to say, can you get me one of those properties? Yeah. So I'd go out and help them, and then they're friends or friends of friends. Yeah. And an agent pulled me aside one day and he said, look, you need to be licensed to do this because you're starting to do a little bit of volume, so to speak. Yeah. So I went out and did that, and I got myself licensed, and from that day on I was a buyer's agent, I suppose. Yeah. And it was good.
And so how many years are we talking, Steve? What sort of...
So I think it was 2000 was my first property.
Yep.
And it was only about 3 years after that I
came into the industry.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Now, in terms of what would you define as your philosophy or your strategy, both personally and professionally?
It's evolved really. When I first started, there was no strategy. It was just buy it, and because I had the double value in 12 months, it was I thought that's what it was about, just purely growth, and I kind of forgot about cash flow and how important it was. But I quickly sort of woke up to myself essentially and started to look after the cash flow, and because there was a few mistakes along the way in those first early years, which was more about greed and ego more so than anything else. But the philosophy today is about growth, and it's about cash flow. There needs to be that combination, and everyone's interpretation of cash flow, or where it should be, is a little different.
Everyone's household circumstances are different,
and that's just as important. Well, that's the key. We talk about properties now in terms of cash flow, and some people, I believe, go out with any sort of plan in terms of, well, what's their buffer, what can they afford, and it's more of just throw yourself in the deep end and go from there, and I don't think that's the right way.
So you got your first one away in 2000. Obviously, was that through market timing, or was it just the rising tide lifting all ships at that time? I mean, or was it your future wife was absolutely brilliant at her asset selection and a location selection?
Because we're recording, I'm going to say she's brilliant.
She was brilliant. She's the brains.
Honey, you need to listen to this podcast.
It was asset selection all the way, but all jokes aside, it was. Her philosophy back then was about finding an undervalued area that had good infrastructure. So all the stuff that we look for today, but in an affordable area.
Before her time.
And I think she might have had 3 before then, and it was just jump in, as I said, and it's worked really, really well. But as I said, there's been mistakes along the way in the early stages, and I think that's really sort of honed the skill to make those kind of mistakes.
Do you want to share one of those mistakes with us?
One,
what's a big one? What's one that
A big mistake. I bought a off-the-plan serviced holiday apartment. So I don't think they get worse than that.
From a white shoe salesman?
Well, actually it was, and a pretty good suit from Lowe's. I shouldn't say that.
Queensland or
no, it was in the central coast of New South Wales.
Okay.
Really good holiday area, great water, beautiful water, and we bought it because we were sold the dream. But I suppose a little bit was we thought that we would go up there every 2 weeks and stay in this apartment. And to this day, I've been there 4 times, stayed there 2 times because I don't want to take my own income away. In terms of value, I think I bought it for around about 360 off the plan, I think it was, or 362 or something like that. On completion, it valued magnificently, and I don't know how, looking back, but today it's worth less than what I paid for it. And it was just a very, very expensive lesson, but I'm glad I did it because it has taught me so much.
What's the message that you say to someone that's in that same situation? Because sadly, that scenario that you've just described is very, very common. And for a lot of people, they only realise that in hindsight. So what do you think are, for the benefit of the listeners, what do you think are the key things that you overlooked when you made that decision that if you went back, you wouldn't do again?
First and foremost, I think it was just greed and ego. It was just like, here, I bought another one, sign a contract, park it away, that sort of thing. And it was off the plan, so I didn't have to worry about it for, I think it was 18 months, $1,000 down or whatever it was. But I think it's more to do with the ability of the salesman and how they can pitch it to you, and the numbers. The numbers are highly inflated. the costings to operate of the building are never true. And if in particular this unit, I think I've got the world's most expensive teaspoons and forks and knives because I'm just continually paying for new ones.
So it obviously has a manager.
It does.
Is that one of the big hotel groups, or is it? Yeah, okay.
It is.
So it's a big hotel group. How many in the complex?
It'd be probably a couple of hundred.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how many different changes of management groups have gone through since you've owned it?
That's a well-pointed question. I think we're about up to 4.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I've replaced but the building has replaced the elevators twice. So there was massive extra costings. But when I look at the numbers, for every dollar it generates, 51 cents in the dollar is gone in management and cleaning.
Yeah.
That's not even including strata fees, council rates, or anything like that. It's just crazy.
Hey Ben, that's a good thing too. If you think about the filters that we overlay, investment grade, owner-occupier appeal and scarcity, they fail all 3 of those.
Yeah.
And a whole heap more.
Yeah. But that's an important thing for the listeners to understand that even investment grade in terms of the fact that the owner-occupier appeal just isn't there on those particular properties. Put a for sale sign at the front. It's just another investor who they're calculated looking to buy, and they're unemotional about usually unemotional about the decision. So
very much so. And I remember during the GFC, just prior to the GFC, that particular suburb had, and this is where the media can be very dangerous. It had the highest growth statistics in terms of value, but that was really because there was a lot of off-the-plan developments settling, and that distorts the numbers.
Yeah,
then during the GFC, it also had, in New South Wales, it had the highest foreclosure rate, which really is where
indicates exactly where it is. Yeah, that's. And those management type contracts, I'm fortunate because obviously my background was Hamilton Island Resort, and we have some holiday apartments, and definitely not my management group. We're exclusive management group for the island. But I was fortunate enough to sit in on a couple of those. So we had the Whitsunday holiday apartments at the time, and they had poor returns, and they was constantly asking for more money, and that was what I saw. That when a management group would change hands, the first thing they do is say, "Can everyone just give us $15,000 because we just want to spruce the rooms up a little bit more, and then we think we can improve the occupancy because the feedback has been that the occupancy is no good because the rooms are tired."
Yeah, they're dated, and you need new couches and beds and TVs and so on.
Yeah. And I remember, just for the Reefview Hotel at the time, which has 360 odd rooms, just replacing the doonas in the hotel, $380,000 in doona covers. Just to basically, so that's just that was the, we've got to have the fish, got to have the reef look. Yeah. So, it was, the sort of new rooms that we're doing. That's without sheets, that's in it. That is just the bed cover, $380,000 to fit it out.
And that's just for doona covers. Imagine
just
everything else.
Covers, yeah. So your $35 million when you refit a resort doesn't go very far.
But isn't that a buy signal? Because imagine the depreciation on that.
Very good.
In terms of fast forward now to 2015, what sort of investor are you now? And you've obviously got a commercial business. So what sort of properties are you looking for to help with your clients?
It's based around growth and cash flow once again, and we really specialise in the more affordable areas for us. Now every now and again we do go into the blue chip areas, but it's for specific people more so than anything. With cash flow, our philosophy is it just enables you to be able to hold the asset that's going to grow over a period of time without having to live on 2-minute noodles.
Yep.
We don't take any tax advantages or depreciation into account or anything like that. It's more just a cash in, cash out scenario. That lets me sleep at night, knowing what it really is monthly. And that's the philosophy of our business today.
And are you valuating? Is that sort of part
sometimes
of the work?
And I think certain markets dictate that you need to value add, and sometimes you're better off doing nothing. So Sydney at the moment, we'll go back 3 or 4 years ago, we would do nothing. We would just ride that growth, so to speak. There's no need to spend the money on it. Other areas today, we might need to give it a haircut and a shave, as we would call it, so paint and carpets. Or we might remodel it completely, or we might subdivide it if it's a block of units or a big block of land or whatever it may be, but to sort of force that growth, force that equity so that we can harvest it as soon as we can.
So, and obviously when you're dealing with other people's money, once it's all different when it's yours, you can, but when you're obviously playing with other people's money in their lives, has that led you to sort of fine tune the number of strategies that you would look at and wash out some of the strategies you just think not core business, not too risky for our clients or whatever? Or is it you still would go high risk, high reward for those clients who really did want that high risk, high reward strategy?
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It may be right, it may be wrong, but for me, I need to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And
this is why he's a member of the board at Pippa, because, we don't want those high risk, high rollers that just, promise the world and deliver nothing.
Yeah, for sure. I just need everything to work, and it needs to be as smooth as it possibly can with the right fundamentals, all the stuff that everybody always talks about, I suppose, more so than anything. But if someone comes to us and says, look, I want to generate $200,000 worth of passive income in 18 months, I'd say, look, I'm not your guy.
Really? I was going to come.
I've got this great off-the-plan apartment you can buy in holidays.
It's got great depreciation. We just spent $380,000 on Doonas.
And 2 new elevators.
Very good. So that's great. So now in your philosophy, it's again, you're matured in your views, and you're obviously, studying the sciences and the types of things that you look for. Mm-hmm. Just very broadly, what are some of the sort of things that you're looking for when you're searching areas?
Look, apart from what we all talk about, which is population growth and so on, which are the normal fundamentals, I'm looking for consumer confidence or something that's going to get into the market and generate that consumer confidence. So apart from the population growth, apart from the industry, in combination with the price of money, I think is a really good way to put it. The price of money, consumer confidence, and supply and demand. And they're the 3 pillars of investing. Everything else is a derivative of it in any way, shape or form. We try to pinpoint a market well before the media does. Yeah. And that's really important because the media will break or make a market, and whether it's true or not in terms of what they're talking about is irrelevant. They just have that ability. And a good example of that is probably Sydney 5 years ago. Yeah. It now, I believe, is just self-perpetuating. People are buying because they're buying because other people are buying. Yeah. And
FOMO. The sheep leading the sheep.
Exactly. FOMO.
Yeah. Fear of missing out.
I just think there's going to be some people out there hurting that are purchasing now. That doesn't mean everybody, every suburb. But there will be some pain.
Yeah. Where do you see the biggest pain? Is it in the high rise, off the plan stuff?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think not just in Sydney though as well. I think Sydney. Well, the city centre and those outer rings, those closer rings, they're going to be oversupplied, no doubt. It doesn't take very long for developers to knock up, 30, 40 units or whatever it may be. Personally, I think the inner city of Brisbane may have the same effect.
We concur.
And I don't think WA is any different. Probably the only state where I don't think the inner city is going to be too affected yet is going to be South Australia, Adelaide. And that's just my personal opinion.
We're same with Melbourne. The pipeline of completions by 2017 in some even city fringe areas is going to put units under a bit of pressure.
You only got to look at the amount of cranes in the sky. And how quick they can knock them up, and Melbourne will be no different.
Weapons of mass construction. I think
I'm going to take that as my expression. I like it.
The CBD is saw it recently could be dangerous. I don't think that's a bad thing for people to totally avoid CBDs around the country. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see the decision that some property investors will be faced with soon, where the price of these off-the-plan apartments might drop to the point where it's actually cheaper for them to forfeit their 10% deposit rather than tap into their equity to pay more money on an asset that's going down in value. And I think that will become self-perpetuating for supply and for value and price in the area.
I think that's 100% right, as long as they don't get sued by the developer, I suppose, on any
But if
loss.
developer might have a few legal cases if everyone's doing it en masse, that's the challenge.
And I think with the new lending arena that we have with and especially with off the plan, those buyers that perhaps were putting $1,000 down or a deposit bond and buying 4 or 5 of them, and we've had some new clients that have done this, which is a shame to see.
So we've seen them too.
Trying to control that, thinking they're going to get a 95% loan on completion plus growth and really put nothing out of their pocket, to be knocked back on their loans now, to be getting 80%, maybe 90% if they're lucky, and the valuers aren't valuing up. I think there's going to be a lot of hurt.
And the worst case is quite often they're sold on the idea that you don't even have to settle. You can on-sell it to someone else and you'll make your 6 figures in between. So,
speculation, that's right.
It is. That's pure speculation.
It's red or black.
There's no fundamentals in behind it, other than this whole FOMO and this sheep mentality. Oh, everyone else is doing it, and you know, and the selling agents and the marketeers. Yeah, we did the one around the corner, and that sold out in 2 days, and these ones are, you know, $50,000 more, and we've got another one to do around the corner. So you get in now. Oh, it's just unbelievable.
Dangerous.
Any real roadkill stories you've seen, obviously from clients that have come to you that have sort of said, can you fix what's happened in the past? Is there anything that sort of stands out to you that that you've seen over and above just the standard buying off the plan?
Roadkill. I like that. That's 2 I've got off you now. Roadkill. Look, most of the time it's always around off the plan or potential land development, greenfield sites and what have you. But probably the worst I've had recently is a elderly person. I think they were 55 or 60 years of age, and they went to another, in inverted commas, which you can't see, advisor. And they had $100,000 and they wanted to invest it before they retired. And so what this advisor did, suggested them to go far north Queensland and buy a quasi-retirement studio, which was a second hand. And they paid $100,000 for it, cash, so unencumbered. And no word of a lie, that property still produces negative cash flow. No debt, and it still didn't break even.
Oh man, God!
And
that is roadkill.
That's coming from the accountant. So he's not dressing it up or down or sideways. That's fact. So the rental wasn't there to begin with, and the costs to operate once again were nothing near where it should have been or what was forecasted. It was just, and to recommend that type of investment for someone at that stage of their life who perhaps was looking for some, pretty quick growth, maybe before they retire. It was sad, very sad to see. And when they come to me with a situation like that, there is nothing that we can do other than look at all the numbers and say, can you get out of this and recoup as much as you possibly can? And with some good financial advice around it, of course.
You talked about sleep at night factor. I mean, the person who did that, how can they possibly sleep at night? Because we talk about 4 levers: time, target, income and expenditure. They're things you can play with. The person just has 0 time. Done. Nothing.
Yeah. And I just don't know how the person does sleep at night, quite frankly. But I actually know this advisor. Sort of
not a PIPA member, I'm hoping.
No, not at all.
Good.
And I think they genuinely believe that it was the right asset selection. I think they genuinely believe that.
And that does raise a really interesting point, Steve, that I've interviewed a few people for job opportunities here, obviously, with us. And some of them have come from a marketeering background. And when you sit down and try and say, so what was it about that you were attracted to? They honestly believed that the apartments and everything that they were doing was really good. It was good investment.
Yeah. And
so they could reel off population growth. They could reel off a shopping centre. They could reel off convenience. But they couldn't. When we talked about owner-occupier appeal, scarcity, land composition, they were like, "What? Why is that important?" And so they do believe that they are actually not doing a bad thing, and they're trained that way. So if they've come from no experience, no formal training, that's why we want everyone to be qualified as an advisor, they can then open their eyes up to sort of say, you know what, the fundamentals weren't right. So we've cherry-picked the best things about this suburb, but we've sold you the crap stock.
Yeah, and I think often the best salesmen are the easiest people to sell to in that kind of scenario. And because they have the ability to perhaps work themselves up between their ears into how good a product is, whether it's a telephone, a banana, or a property, for that matter. But I think subconsciously it's the feed the greed mentality that sits in their subconscious, which is saying, the more I'm going to do this, it's going to be a pretty good reward for me. In fact, just before we came in here, I've received 2 emails, and I won't name the major real estate brand, who have emailed us from the Property Expo where we met and said there is 2% referral commissions on anything that you can do in terms of your clients for these off-the-plan developments up in Brisbane. And I just find that amazing that they're gutsy enough to actually do that.
Let's put a number on that. So 2% of a purchase price of 500,000.
Yeah, I think it's 490 plus. Yeah.
So what do we?
And that's a low offer. Usually it's 5 or 6 is standard. And the absolute.
Well, they'll get the 5 or 6, and then they'll pay you the 2 just for flipping them a name, which is just extraordinary, mate.
It's disgusting. And I was actually at the expo, it was a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was, and another developer approached us and said that there is $40,000 commission for every one of these you move for us. Now the price point of these are only $300,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yep.
It's
So that's a really good point for the listeners, isn't it? If they go to these expos, there are some good operators at those expos. Make no mistake.
Definitely.
But if you're going to buy from someone who's at an expo, let it be a few meetings that you have with these people to get to know them, get a sense for them. You know, your gut's often going to work very for you.
Yeah.
Because if you bought after the first meeting at some of these, we've been doing it for years. You've been doing it for years. There's a lot of salespeople masquerading as advisors there.
I think that in itself is where the problem is, and that's why the industry needs to be regulated. Full disclosure. It needs to be there.
Look, I mean, and if we know it's not, so PIPA is obviously the sheriff of the industry. People who are members of PIPA are obviously act under a code of conduct.
For sure.
You know, the PIPA website, www.pipa.asn.au, you can search for members of the association on the website, and they will disclose how they are paid. Now, that said, we're vetting everyone that's applying for membership. Sometimes it's still no guarantee, so you still got to do your due diligence. Just because they've got a livery from the PIPA association, that's great. It's a good sign that they're ethical, but you still got to dig deeper, because sometimes they want instant credibility, and so they basically become a member without any track record. So it's really important to keep doing your due diligence. And just because they're a member of association, I mean, a good example, you can get a bad GP and he still might be a member of the AMA, the Australian Medical Association. So it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And if they're disclosing how they're paid, or if they're fee for service, at least you know what the story is.
Well, I think so. And furthermore from that, I think the consumer really needs to educate themselves to begin with. I think that's where the lack of their ability, for want of a better word.
Hence the podcast. That's exactly why we jumped into this.
Because people can be vulnerable to enthusiastic amateurs, and what I mean by that is you've got the spruiker who knows they're doing the wrong thing, but sometimes you've got a salesperson who actually genuinely believes that they're telling the right message, because they believe in property investment, and as you say, they believe the story that's rattling around in their mind. And that can often be really dangerous, because they've got this unshakable belief in the rising tide lifting all ships philosophy.
Sure.
And because they've read in a book that it's going to grow by 10% per annum, they just assume that property's going to grow because it always has. And so that's potentially one of the areas that people, the enthusiastic amateur who genuinely can look you in the eye, walk down the street, be happy to chat to you, but they don't have the right info.
No, and I think that's why the team around you actually needs to be very solid, and it needs to be vast as well.
I agree.
I just think you need to establish trust with the person that is part of your team, or every member. And quite often, I think reading a testimonial on a website is just not enough. Get in touch literally with other satisfied customers, I believe, is a really good way to vet people.
So, Steve, when you talk about team, who makes up a team of professional advisors that you should be working with as an investor?
Look, not limited to, but obviously a property advisor, someone who actually walks the walk and who's in today's market, not yesterday's hero, because we all could have bought properties 10 years ago and done all right out of them if we held on to
That's a great point.
I think your accountants, your solicitors, your financial advisors, property managers is often one of the ones that are underrated.
Yes, but they're looking after your asset, so
I know, and
it's like, hello.
But people tend to think that just because you pay them as your property manager, well, that's enough. But you need to manage your manager. It's very, very important.
And they've got amazing intel, because you ring them up and you say, look, I'm thinking of buying this property in this street, and they go, don't even think about it. There's a lab down the street, or there's just a notoriously bad area. Exactly.
It's and then of course, if you dig deeper, I think part of your team should be your pest and building inspectors, your tradesmen, your painters, whatever it may be. And someone that perhaps can monitor you, which should really be your advisor forever and ever. I mean,
And obviously there's buyer's agent.
The buyer's agent.
So which is obviously what you're at. So there's some good tips there, mate.
Mate, some great tips. We've flown up to 30 minutes, but of course we'd love to chat for you for hours. But obviously got a business. What's the name of your business?
Right Property Group, and we've got our offices in Bella Vista in Norwest Business Park of Sydney. There's 3 property management offices throughout Sydney and Brisbane, and a financial planning business.
Well, there you go, guys. You couldn't go too far wrong with checking out Steve and his organisation.
We're actually going to help our listeners. We're going to put his website up on thepropertycouch.com.au, so you can go there and get a link and go and check out Steve. But mate, we really appreciate your time coming on today. Obviously,
Pleasure.
got a lot of insights to share. I don't think we got enough time with you, so maybe we'll have you on again at some stage. But we appreciate you being part of our summer series.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So there you go, folks. If you go to, as we say every week, if you go to Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, you can follow us, and we'll leave you all the tips there, and we'll leave you all the insights when it comes out. And again, if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au, we'll leave all the details for Steve, so you can go and check him out. Mate,
there we go. Another one down.
Another one down.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, folks. We will see you next week. Bye for now.